you could save a slave for $327 on average. Why isn't this on headlines everywhere?
They're working on brick kilns, making bricks, trying to pay the debt back. An interest per day, it's not possible for them to pay it back.
What about the slave owners? What are their reactions? Are they like, give me my money? Are they super narcissistic?
We just launched our 5-year vision, which is to rescue 100,000 people from slavery.
Aren't you just funding the slave owners?
And this is the best way I can say it without getting graphic, but in some of these brick kilns, you don't want to be cursed with a beautiful daughter.
Welcome everyone to the Traffic Jam Heroes podcast. This is the first of its kind. I'm with the Conduit Mission leader. His name is Eric Newberry. And so I'm just going to get straight to the point. So you could save a slave for $327. Tell me how.
Yeah, I mean, so when people hear that, they're like, why $327? Number one. So that's an average, right? That's an average. It's so simple. People are shocked when they hear that we're doing this, but if you go back thousands of years, this kind of slavery has been in existence. I mean, in the second book of the Bible, it's about God rescuing his people from brick kilns, right? They were making brick and they had to make it without straw. It was like, that's exactly how it was set up. When God goes and rescues the Jews out of Egypt, it's off of these brick kilns. These brick kilns have been around for thousands of years. And so in this country that I'm working in and that we're working in together, they're still making bricks by hand. It's their number one industry. That's how they do it. So you've got people all over the place. There's an estimated 20,000 brick kilns filled with people who have been working 16, 17 hours a day making these bricks by hand. So they're literally gathering the mud. They're pouring water on it. They're forming the mud patties into these brick metal forms, and they're taking those. They're setting it out to let it dry in the air, and then they're pulling it into a big oven, a brick kiln. It's got a stack that goes into the air, and it's just, pluming out black smoke. It's this really oppressive picture. I've been there myself many times, and they're doing this all day, all night, trying to pay off a debt. And what we've discovered with these families is a lot of them have taken on debts from paying dowries for their daughters or for their sisters to get married, which is a very Eastern but a normal situation. So they've got to borrow money to pay the dowry debt to marry off their daughter. And then we've seen a lot of other generational debt. Their dad borrowed the money, so now the son is working. The grandpa borrowed the money, so now the son is working, or the grandson is working. And then there's this other picture of people getting injured on a motorcycle or getting injured in just normal life, and there's no medical insurance. And so if they want to fix the bone sticking out of their arm, they've got to borrow that money. Otherwise, the hospital will say, good luck, and send them to the streets. So there's a lot of really, I think, normal situations that can throw people into this enslaved position. And so it's called debt service or debt servanthood, or, there's a lot of different words for it. But essentially, they borrowed money, and now they're working on brick kilns, making bricks, trying to pay the debt back. And the problem here is they have an interest per day it's not possible for them to pay it back. Does that make sense? Their interest rate is so high that it's very similar to like a car title loan or something like that in America, where you borrow and you get into this rhythm on the payday loan where you keep borrowing money, but then it's every few months you've lost an entire paycheck and it becomes impossible for you to climb out of it. It's way worse than even that. So these families we've met they've been entrapped for 10 years, 50 years sometimes. 60 years is the highest we've met personally. And so it's quite simple, the process, right? It's the family has an amount of debt. Pick whatever number you want. It doesn't matter, right? It could be $800, $900 for the debt to pay it off. So when you take an average family size there, which is 5 people, and you take $900, the average debt of the family is somewhere around $150, $180, something like that. It's so low. but it's so much for them, they could never pay it off. That's why they end up there for 10, 20 years. So what we do is the process is very simple. We have attorneys. We have a complete auditing team that validates every single debt. We have we have caseworkers, and we go in and we actually pay the debt off for the family, right? So whatever they owe to the brick kiln owner who's just running a business, whatever they owe to that guy, we pay off. And we do it with attorneys, and we do it on film, and we do it audited, right? So that I can prove to you every single family we've paid off their debt. I have the receipts. We have the check that we wrote. It's actually written in check, right? So we have all of the data, and that data comes back to that number you actually just said. And say the number is fluid, it doesn't matter, right? We know that the average debt is somewhere around 150 to 180. And you go, well, what's the discrepancy between 150, 180, and then the $300 number? And it's simple. You can't just pay people's debts off. That doesn't actually solve the problem. Right? These people were in difficult economic situations. A lot of them are Christians, a lot of them. And so they're persecuted Christians who are kind of relegated to the worst jobs in society. So they're not making very much money. If they get any setback at all, it's easy for them to end up in slavery. And so we pay that debt off, and then we start the rehabilitation process, right? Because that's what we should do. You have to do it, in fact. These people, they need a hand so that they can start their life again. You can't just free them out. It's kind of like when prisoners get out of jail, they hand them $100 and say, good luck. It doesn't work well. That's what we do in America. It just doesn't work well. They need a couple of, they need a hand to walk with them and show them the way they should go. And so with these families, what we've done is we've started a rehabilitation process where we move them into a new home. We take care of their rent for the first month. We provide them enough food for a few months so that they don't have to spend any money on that. All of their needs are met. And then we actually figure out what skill set they have and what is going to be the most lucrative business we can launch them into. And then we train and launch them into that business, right? So they go from being a slave, not making any money, to just a few weeks later, they are living in their own home, have their own food. The kids are back in school. The kids have school clothes. They have books. They have everything they need. If they needed medical help, we get it for them. And they own their own business. So now they're making enough money every day to not only get by, but to make sure this doesn't happen again. And the last part is we plug them into the local church to make sure that they're being overseen by a pastor who knows if they're there or not, who knows, make sure they don't disappear, make sure that there's no recidivism. They don't go back into the brick kiln. And so that's kind of the process.
Okay. How often do they go back into bondage as slavery? Is it rare?
It's only happened one time, I believe, and we've rescued over 10,000 people. It's happened one time because someone borrowed money for a wedding.
Okay. Just so people understand how big this is, how many people are in this bondage as slavery all over this region?
Sure. Let me answer that. And let me make one more comment on the last question.
Yeah, for sure.
How many people go back in? So we've only had one. That's the truth. And it's because we're establishing them in the right businesses. It's working, right? And we're constantly working on this, we're trying to gain wisdom from heaven, trying to gain wisdom from God. How can we actually solve this problem holistically and sustainably? And so one is the answer, but we actually make the families sign an affidavit, as well as the brick kiln owner has to sign a legally binding affidavit that they'll never borrow money again, right? So before we signed those affidavits, someone went back in. After that, no one's gone back in. Okay, so we learned from that one family. Well, our goal is 100% no one goes back in, 0% recidivism rate. And so when you ask me the question, how many people are in these brick kilns? The number that we are looking at is around 4 million people. And that's in one country. 4 million people, and that's in one silo of slavery. Yeah, so 4 million people, and about 25% of those are marginalized people, so Christians specifically, because this country is Islamic. And so 25% are Christians, and 25% of those people are children. Okay, so out of the 4 million, 1 million are children that are enslaved, making bricks every day. You think of your kids, you think, oh man, I want the best for them. I want them to go to the best school. I want them to have every opportunity. These kids don't go to school. They make bricks all day, right? That's the reality for them. So there's 4 million people in total across 20,000 brick kilns. There's 1 million Christians who are enslaved, and 1 million of the 4 million people are children.
That's unbelievable. So you could save a slave for $327 on average. Why isn't this on headlines everywhere?
I think there's one, it's an uncomfortable reality that, especially if you're from the West, where we're a lot of people from the West they're trying to get by too, and they're not doing as well as everyone thinks, and so I have a lot of I think compassion for that, but it's I think a matter of ignorance. People don't know about it. The world hasn't known about it, or if they did know about it, there was not really a good solution for it. And so here's what I've learned, and I'm very optimistic about this, not pessimistic. I don't go, man, you should be doing this. You need to go do this. I go like, I think when people learn about it, Zach, that they respond. And so it's this beautiful picture of, wow, man, Jesus let us be a part of the solution here. And when we tell people the story, they actually respond. They really do. The vast majority, every church I've preached in that I've told this story to, every place I've done Devo, the people respond and they give and they want to be a part of it, right? And so I actually tend to lean in that direction, that all we have to do is tell the story. Even today, we're telling the story. There's going to be people that listen to this and they're going to go, I'm going to find those people and I'm going to partner with them. I'm going to be a part of this solution. That's really what I believe. And when you look at even the point of doing messaging like this, the point is to love and inspire one another to good works. I want to tell people, hey, there's this big problem, but we have a way bigger God. He's way bigger than this problem. And he already proved in Exodus that he can pull all of his people out of slavery, right? Jesus, when Jesus came, he preached his first ever message. It's in Luke chapter 4. It's in Luke chapter 4. It's the first message Jesus ever preached. He opens the scroll in the synagogue to Isaiah 61. And two of the things that Jesus said, it's amazing. He opens the scroll, he reads it. He says, the Lord has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. But then he says, to proclaim freedom to the captive, to set the prisoner free. Two of the 5 things that Jesus said he was anointed to do are about freeing people from slavery. And he rolls up the scroll and he tells everyone listening, it's been fulfilled in your presence. And what's amazing is that was only half of Isaiah 61. It was only a part of it. He didn't even finish reading, right? Because the next part is about him coming back, which hasn't happened yet. So we're in that middle part where he rolled up the scroll, and we have this promise that it's been fulfilled. So I believe we're working in the provision of God already, the plan and the heart of Jesus already. And as we step and walk into this thing faithfully, the resources, the provision, the ability to do it follow.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people read that passage and they're like, oh, it's mentally set you free. It's like, no, there's literally way more slaves that have ever existed now than it's ever been. In the transatlantic slave trade, there was about 13 million total slaves that were traded and sold in that time. There's over 40 million slaves right now, and it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, actually, we're approaching 50 million slaves, and that's only 2 categories of slavery, and that is forced labor, which is what we're fighting, and forced marriage. That's 2 categories that they can count. You know the truth of anyone fighting trafficking? The truth is, no one knows the number.
Yeah.
No one knows the number. You can't know the number. That's kind of the whole point. It's happening in the dark, right? So no one knows what that number is. It's at least 50 million in these 2 categories. Yeah, it's more than in the history of the world combined. And let me caveat that. Some people push back on that and they go, yeah, well, we have more people. It's true, we have more people, but we're the people here and the problem's happening right in front of us, right? So I don't think Jesus cares that we have more people and that statistically, I don't think that's his heart at all. I think he's hearing the prayers of those people making bricks all day. He's hearing that he's watching their tears hit that dirt. He's the one watching blood, come out of their hands and out of their heads as they're being abused. He's the one that is hearing their prayers, and he's wondering. It's that Isaiah thing where he goes, "I'm searching everywhere to and fro, looking for anyone willing." The people who are willing shoot their hand up. Right now, that's probably some people listening to this. They're going, "I have never known about this, and I am bursting to respond to it." And if I tell you the story of how this all started for me, which I'm sure you're going to ask, it'll make more sense. But my point is, you're hearing this and you're going, I'm going to get involved in this. That's who Jesus is looking for. And those people are going to be a part of the greatest abolition movement that's ever been launched. Right? In what's already been fulfilled. This is already the heartbeat of Jesus, right? This was the heart. This is what led William Wilberforce and Sharp and so many other guys to step in to kind of throw off their wealth and their fame and say, I'm going to die for this cause. And Wilberforce fought his whole life not to pass a law. Everybody sees that. They think Wilberforce just tried to pass a law. Wilberforce did something far greater than just get a law passed in Britain. He did something far greater. He changed people's hearts and their minds on slavery. And he was the first one to fight and do that, right? Actually, he was just doing what Jesus had already done. So he actually made it. He's the one that built the foundation we're building on right now, which is everyone, when you hear slavery, you know it's wrong. Before Wilberforce, people thought it was fine across the world, right? And so, but what led him was the fact that Jesus said that it was finished. It was the fact that his Christian faith requires action. When you find out people are enslaved, we're the people who have to go get them out. Let me rephrase that. We're the people who get to go get them out.
Yeah.
This is the greatest privilege of a lifetime, right? So many guys and people are they get into their 40s, their 50s. They've worked 20, 30 years at their career. They've made all the money. They've made it to upper middle class or whatever. They've got the boat. They've got all the dream stuff, right? And you see those people, their life implodes when they're in their 50s. You can watch it happen like clockwork. They cheat on their wife. Their kids are now scorned, right? They sell the house. They move somewhere else. They do all this stuff. What are they searching for? They're searching for purpose. They're searching for a reason to live. They're realizing that in their 50s they've spent 30 years doing something that didn't matter. Jesus had the solution for this, and it was us putting our hand to this plow and saying, I'm in, I'm going, I'm never looking back. I'm going to fight until the day I die for something that's bigger than me, that's more important than me. Then I never get into this self-reflecting, I'm selfish, thinking about what makes me happy, blah, 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 blah. You'll never feel joy like you do when you see these kids smile coming off of a brick kiln.
Yeah. Yeah, you can never get enough of the world, 100%. What, like, bringing you to that, what is, like, when you rescue multiple families, what thoughts and emotions are just going through your brain?
When I'm actually there and I'm actually in the brick kiln, and I'm on the ground with the people and we're actually packing up their clothing, we're packing up all of their possessions, which is only a few, right? It's like a bed, and the bed is like a stick frame bed that has hammock netting tied across it. That's their bed. And they live in these brick houses, just the kind of messed up bricks from the brick kiln. They use those and stack them up, and then they have this house with a thatch roof that when it rains, the water comes right through onto them as they're sleeping. The door is wide open. There's no door, right? It's just an opening. So we're going into those huts and we're carrying their stuff out, and we're carrying their pots and their bowls that is in this outdoor kitchen to a rickshaw that has a flatbed, and we're loading up the family of 5 or 6 on the flatbed with all of their possessions. And they are smiling from ear to ear. So there's this great sense of joy, of course, this deep sense of joy, deep sense of God being so happy with what we're doing. You know, we live to make our Father proud. That's just the way it is. And he's so filled with joy about what's happening. And I'm filled with joy. And then at the same time, when I look to the left, there's another opening. And that opening's to another house that's right there in the same yard. And that family is staying, right? So it's this great sense of joy, this great sense of, I don't want to say burden, because it's not my burden to carry, but I want to say it's another reminder that the work's not finished, and let's get our hand back to the plow. Let's put our head down. We celebrate, and then we get back to work, right? We celebrate, but then we know right here, this family right here, wondering, thinking, praying, when's my time? When do I get to leave? So we get back to work for them. You know, it's a really powerful, painful situation to be in. But that's what's running through my mind every time.
I couldn't imagine. Yeah, that's so crazy to hear. What about the slave owners? What are the reactions? Are they like, give me my money? Are they super narcissistic? What is going through their brain? Do some of them not even think they're doing anything bad?
Well, you got to think. So we're going to have mostly a Western audience right here, okay? So to the Western audience listening, before you jump into, vigilante justice, right? Why don't you take a step back and just think through the way the world is. The world's humongous. We're approaching 8 billion people, right? Or maybe we've crossed it. I don't know. We're approaching 8 billion people. It's a lot of people. You're one of them. There's a lot of cultures. We just have one of them, right? We're Americans, so we step into Eastern countries and go, man, this is completely opposite. It is, okay? These systems have been in place for thousands of years. I want you to imagine you were born in the East, and you were born into a lifestyle. This is the way the East works. This is the way this area works, right? A rural village, whatever. You don't know what we get to know. You don't know what the rest of the world knows. You just know what you live. This is where we live. This is how the business is built. And then I want you to imagine you're in a situation where there's not a lot of economic opportunity, right? These guys figure out a way to make bricks, and they get employees. At the end of the day, we have to face two truths. Here's one. These guys aren't going and kidnapping people to bring them to the brick kiln. People are borrowing money from them. Does that make sense? So one, that's the genesis. We got to be honest about that intellectually. Otherwise, we're going to get into this like we're righteous and they're not, and it's an unhealthy, actually, it's an unproductive thought process. It doesn't help. We're trying to show the brick kiln owners that there's actually a better way to make bricks, right? So we're working on importing machines that make bricks. We're working on a skew of things to kind of kill the demand for slavery. But these brick kiln owners, for the most part, are businessmen. There's a handful of them that are, I would say, evil, right? I would say most of them are they don't know. They just don't know. This is the way business is done. I don't know what you're talking about.
That's crazy.
There's a handful who are evil, for real. And they're doing very evil things. And I'm not going into the things they're doing, but obviously we're working on these cases. Anything you can imagine that happens in situations of authority abuse or anything like that, you can imagine it's happening in those brick kilns. I always say it this way, and this is the best way I can say it without getting graphic, but in some of these brick kilns, you don't want to be cursed with a beautiful daughter, right? And so we try to befriend the brick kiln owners, because at the end of the day, our worldview is simple, that the will of God is that none should perish. That's what the Bible says. And I know we like to disqualify people from this, but the will of God's none should perish, all should come to the knowledge of the Son, right? We want to represent through love and through like, we want to make them ask questions. Why are you doing this? And they ask it every time, man. Why are you doing this? I go, we're doing this for one reason only. This is exactly what I said to the brick kiln owner just not too long ago. We're doing this for one reason only. We are led and compelled by the love of Jesus Christ to do it. That's it. Not because we're good people. We weren't good people before Jesus. You know what I mean? Everything good in us is because he gave us his heart. This is his heart. We're borrowing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think it's unhelpful to just go, these guys are all evil. Let's just take them out. These guys are trying to run businesses for the most part. And there are a few evil ones for sure. But I think we can be a part of the solution. We can be a part of teaching them a better way to run that business, a more profitable way, to get better bricks and to do it without abusing people to get there.
So you talked about, or a bunch of my followers were like, aren't you just funding the slave owners? And my question is, there are 4 million people that are enslaved right now in that area. So if you bought all of them out of bondage debt slavery, what would happen? Would they just go and enslave more people?
Yeah, so it's a really good question, and I saw some of the people say that.
Yeah.
So here's what's happening. We are in a phase of the project right now where we are focused on getting the persecuted out of there, people who are in dire situations. So we're rescuing those people. They're being abused, they're being beaten, they're being everything you can imagine. And that's just not the norm across the industry, okay? So not everyone is being abused, not everyone's being beaten. Not everyone has a very difficult life there, right? Not everyone's life is at risk. So we're sourcing these people first, and we're rescuing them, we're reestablishing them in business. And we're also working in the prevention arm as well. So we're working on establishing people in business before they end up in slavery. But the reality is these brick kiln owners have a never-ending supply of people who are in financial crisis. And so every person we take out, they can go hire someone else. It's no problem. And in fact, all of these brick kiln owners believe that the people that we've rescued will come back. We just don't believe that. And the reason why we don't believe that is because we're focused on fixing the problem holistically. And I think that you can get, if you're from the outside in, and here's what I would say to people as well. If you're on the outside in and you're just looking and criticizing the work other people are doing, you got to ask yourself, man, what work are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Have you given up your life? I'm sure that we're going to find a solution for this. Totally, that's holistic and will be sustainable long term. I'm sure of it. But we are also working on two other fronts to just kind of answer that question with real data and not just some sort of emotional semantic where I go, let me put it back on you. Yeah. That's just a little poke. That's just a little prod.
Everyone needs to hear that, seriously.
Just a little bit.
Oh my gosh, tell me about it, dude. I get it.
It's like the man in the arena. Have you heard that quote?
No.
Google it. But it's a famous quote about the man in the arena, and no one cares what the critic thinks. I don't care unless you're in the arena. So if you're in the arena, you know that there's a way to solve this problem, and here's what we've come up with. So this needs to be solved in 3 ways, and this is what we're working on now. So one is rescue, of course. People that are being beaten and all of the other things that you can imagine. Every day of their life. We need to get them out of those brick kilns, no matter what. Even if they're filled with another slave. I don't care. We need to get them out. And then to fill the problem of slave labor, to finish that problem, we need to mechanize the brick kilns. Every country in the world, except for a few, are using brick machines to make their bricks. It's just a cotton gin moment, right? When you brought the cotton, when the cotton gin, Eli Whitney created the cotton gin, and when it came to America, people stopped picking cotton. The reduction of slave labor was massive because we had the ability to use a machine to do it. It was more profitable. It was more efficient. That's it. So innovation is our answer here. We have machines. China's been making great machines. India makes machines. Indonesia uses machines. All of these countries in the surrounding area, they make their bricks with machines. So now we are importing one, and we've actually got our first brick kiln that's going to let us beta test this thing. And they've given us an agreement. If the brick machine works, we'll give you the slaves. So we have a solution to kill the actual demand. And I believe the brick machines are going to work, and they're working in 10 identical fields, right? So it's not like, oh man, we really hope this works. We're sure it's going to work.
Yeah.
And then that will roll those brick machines out. And as we do that, we're going to kill demand in each brick kiln. So as we rescue those people, it'll be rescued permanently. And on the back end of that, we also have to work in prevention. So the people that are the most at risk and vulnerable, we have to resource those people, which we're working on, right? We've got 20 full-time employees in this country right now. We're working on a plan to expand to 100. We just launched our 5-year vision, which is to rescue 100,000 people from slavery.
Wow.
So we're really focused on sustainably solving the problem. That would be my generous answer to the public on
100%. So it's like kind of a mix between poverty and then the actual need for bricks to be made. Like, is it necessary for these brick kiln owners to like stay in business?
Oh, it's absolutely necessary. It's the number one industry.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So you got to look, okay, when you study trafficking or slavery, there's a common theme at the source of all of it. Economic inopportunity. That's it. People want to make money, so then they'll do whatever it takes to make money. They love money, right? So if a girl, let's say, for example, a girl has no ability to make an income or do anything and her family's starving, she's more liable to go take a job opportunity in a foreign country where she can be trafficked. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if we can we need to have economic solutions for economic problems. That's my point. We need to have economic solutions for economic problems. This is an economic problem. This country is expanding rapidly. They need a bigger economy. They need a place for the middle class to have a life or to even earn a middle class living instead of just high end, low end. And these brick kiln owners they have to make bricks. They have contracts. These are real businesses. It's their number one commodity in the country. It's the biggest industry. Now, what we have to do is partner with them as the body of Christ and say, hey, we're going to actually help you innovate to make a stronger brick faster without humans get sick. They get weary. They don't make their quota. This machine's going to make its quota every day, right? Mm-hmm. So there's so much we have on that innovation side. But that's my point. We've got to do all three of those things holistically to get there. And the brick kiln owners have to stay in business. They just need to innovate, and we're going to help them do that. That's the plan. 100%.
So with the machines, how much does it cost, and how many people get free from slavery from one machine?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. So the machine costs about $25,000, okay? The machine makes 25,000 bricks a day. The average brick kiln has 25 families. I want you to guess what their quota is.
1,000?
It's 1,000.
Yeah.
So
That's crazy.
The one machine replaces every family on an average brick kiln. Some brick kilns are bigger. They need a couple of machines, right? But the one machine replaces all 25 families. It just needs like 3 or 4 people to run the machine. But it's a job of dignity. It's not them barefoot in the mud making bricks all day and their skin's breaking out because that dust has been going into their pores for the last 15 years. And so they've got all these skin infections and their body's broken in half. And, it's away from that, and it's to a dignified work, and you have a machine, and it's like a real factory. It's a real factory now. So, yeah, it's amazing. It's a one-for-one exchange.
100%. You've talked about multiple solutions. Just say I donate to the organization Conduit Mission. Where's that money going?
Yeah, 100% of it goes right to the field. So the way that we're set up is that every single penny that you give is directly going into what you gave it to. It's really simple. And the concept is really simple, is that God gives you inspiration to give. And whatever you feel led to give towards, you're going to give towards that joyfully. We are conduits of that. That makes sense? We're just a pipeline. You put it in, we let it roll through the pipe, and it ends up where it's supposed to be. That's how it works. So it's 100%. We have no admin fees. We don't have anything we take out of the top. There's nothing. So it's 100%. You give $100, $100 is going to go towards buying a family out.
Yeah, you've talked about a lot about the future stuff you're going to do. Have you calculated the total cost of what everything, just say every single family being saved is out of 4 million, and you what was it, 20,000 brick kilns, 10,000?
Yeah, so, and it's not something you can do fast, I can tell you that, because this is a presidential level problem. And so we are working with the nation. We have their permission. We're honoring them. Our job and our goal is to be friends with them and help them solve this problem, right? So we're working in collaboration with the country. And so our primary tactic and goal is to get everyone out. That's what we're shooting for, right? And so we have a couple of organizations that are partnering to do this. In fact, we have 3 main ones that are coming together and collaborating in this. There's one organization in the country. I'm not going to say their name. There's another organization that I actually represent as well called Family Set Free, who's been funding a lot of the infrastructure and development and the software back in and there's so much stuff that they've been funding to make this possible for Conduit Mission, Conduit to be able to raise funds and 100% goes through, right? Obviously, doing something at this level, think it through. We've got a staff of 20. We were going to 100. Those people have to get paid every month. That's not a part of the per family cost. There's aftercare, there's case management, there's therapy, I could give you a breakdown of 30 unique things that we're paying attention to and tracking and calculating. So the number overall is massive to free all those people. Mm-hmm. It's a massive number, right? I think we don't have finalized terms, but to do 100,000, you're probably looking at $60 or $70 million. To do 100,000, there's 4 million. Okay? So 40 times that is a good idea. But there's also a lot of funding in different niche parts of this process that we can get from outside. We can get from people who are funding those specific things. So because we're not just doing one thing here. It's not just slavery. This is holistic. I mean, there's 14 key items that we're doing. It's a business creation vehicle. It's a rescue vehicle. It's a rehab vehicle, a therapy vehicle, right? It's an education vehicle. We're literally solving educational problems. There's so many things because we're putting people into savings groups. We're putting people into schools. If they don't have a school, we're creating the school, right? Guys, we're solving this problem as thoroughly as possible. And our team is well equipped to do it. It's unbelievable what God is doing here. And so the cost is very high, 60 or 70 million just to do 100,000. Scaling up, we'll have infrastructure, and I think that number will come down a bit. But as we scale up, the kind of first-time costs are high. But there's also a lot of opportunity to partner with partner organizations. Let other people come and collaborate and do what they do, right? We don't need to recreate the wheel. So it's quite expensive, but it's going to happen.
Yeah. You said $70 million just to save 100,000 people. And it's you say just, and I get why because it's so big, but 100,000 people, that is 2 stadiums worth. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
What brought you to this? When you first got introduced to this, how did you wrap your mind around how big this is?
I didn't. And I think that's probably the worst thing you could do is try to tackle the macro problem here from the start. God might not even be calling you to tackle or worry about the macro problem, right? So it started out micro for me. I was working. I actually lived in a small town called Williamsburg, Ohio. Okay, I grew up there, and what's interesting about Williamsburg, Ohio, is very little. Very little is interesting. I played football there. Our team went defeated. You know what I mean?
Defeated, not undefeated.
Not undefeated. Okay. Defeated. We lost every single game my senior year. All I knew was defeat. I'm like, man, I can't believe I came from this town, and I love that little town, but I grew up there, and there's a lot of great people there and amazing people in that little town. It's so funny. Some of the most boring towns in America have the best people. And so I grew up there, and it's amazing. One of my best friends growing up lived in this little shotgun-style rickety house right by the railroad tracks. And we were hanging out one day, and we were bored. This is before you had phones and tablets and stuff. You had to actually get creative to figure out what to do. So she's like, "Hey, there's this bunker in this back bedroom. You want to check it out?" And yeah, I'm 14, so I know now. I've seen enough movies. You say no to this.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, this is a bad start, right? I don't want to live in the bunker.
No.
And but 14-year-old me with no frontal lobe, I'm going, absolutely, I got to see this thing, And she goes back, pulls this little shag carpet up, pulls this big piece of plywood up, and as promised, there's a bunker. And so I climb down in the bunker, and man, it's such a creepy feeling. And I kind of shine a light back into the corner, and it just keeps going. And I'm like, okay, I'm out of here. Later, I find out that that's a part of the Underground Railroad. Okay. And
wow.
My town, Williamsburg, Ohio, there's 2 tunnels of the Underground Railroad that converge into Williamsburg, Ohio. And there was a conductor there, and his name was Mr. Huber. Mr. Huber rescued between 300 and 500 slaves coming out of the Underground Railroad, right? Because the Ohio River, coming from Kentucky to Ohio, that was the mark of freedom. Ohio was the first free state, okay? So that the beginning of Ohio, even what it's marked by is this abolition movement. And my town was one of the stops. It was one of the stops on the Underground Railroad. Same town where I bought my first house, Sammy and I, my wife, and I'm working on this house, and it had 5 acres. So, I that's where I learned this saying that you don't own land, it owns you. I mean, you're just working on it all the time. And so if you have free time, you're working on it. I'm out there working. 10 hours later, I come inside, saw something on Facebook that changed my life. And I think it's important that we pay attention to this part of the story, because it was on Facebook, this random post. This is what people that are consuming this are going to see, or they might see a clip of this on Instagram or Facebook or Reel or whatever, TikTok or wherever it's going to go. And this is how it happened for me, guys. I'm telling you, this is literally the truth. I see this post from my friend Victoria. And my friend Victoria, her husband Mark, they had been working in this nation doing evangelism. And they found out about this problem. And she made a post because her mother's heart was so filled with compassion. Like, I don't know what else to do. So she made a post, and she thought, maybe we can raise some money, right? I see the post. And the second I see the post, and it tells me the story of this family, and the family, what happened was the wife got into an accident and broke her arm, and she needed medical care, and she couldn't get it, and so the only way to get medical care was to borrow money from the brick kiln owner. And when we met them, they had been in slavery for 12 years. They had birthed all 3 of their kids on the brick kiln. I was shocked because I'd never heard of this before. And so immediately I knew God wanted me to respond. Immediately. Somebody's listening to this right now. God's telling you to respond. Don't miss the opportunity. I'm so glad that I was obedient. I'm so glad that I responded. And here's what I did. I did the only thing I knew how to do. I didn't have influence. I didn't have money. I didn't have any of that. I just got on Facebook Live and shot a video, and I said, guys, I just learned about this. Let's get them out. Everybody threw in $200. By 14 hours later, we had $2,000 raised for the first family. Sent it over to Victoria.
It's amazing.
And Mark, right? And so, and that family, we got them out, and we got them into a small business, and just like that, it was started. And we bootstrapped the next 15 families that year. And before you know it, people started hearing about it, and Conduit heard about it, and they started funding $10,000 a month. And we built and built and built, and it got bigger and bigger. And that's turned into why we're sitting here now. So
right.
It started out very micro, one family. And you know what our saying was back then? And I'll never forget how much joy we had that first year. We were so thrilled, every single family. You got to celebrate every single family. It's such a miracle. And so we would just celebrate. We'd be like, I cannot believe we got 2 families out. I can't believe it. Can we do one more? And that was the pursuit the whole time. Can we do one more?
Is it possible?
Can we do one more? So you can't start with macro, 100,000 people, 4 million people, but can we do one more? It's like the starfish story. You remember that starfish story? And this girl's like tossing starfish back into the ocean. The ocean's just filled with starfish. And guy says, hey, that doesn't really make a difference. And she tosses one in and says, for that one, it did. Right?
Wow.
It's this picture of, can we do one more, I think is the right question versus, is this impossible? It's absolutely impossible, Zach. And thank God it's impossible, because if it wasn't, we'd have to do it in our own strength. We don't have to. So we're doing something that's impossible. We have a God who said, with God, all things are possible, right? So that's the beauty, is he has to make it happen. We can't. We can't raise enough money in the local church or even through a podcast. We're not going to be able to do it. We need God to do it. It's beautiful, right?
How old were you when you saw that post?
Man, that was 5 years ago. So
5 years ago.
I'm 36 now.
Got you.
I was like 31.
Yeah.
And so, and man, what God's done since then is insane.
I'm kind of asking a rhetorical question. What criteria do you need to be to contribute to this?
You have to have a yes. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to tell Jesus, yes, I'll do it. And even if you don't believe, even if you don't believe in Jesus, put your own worldview to test. You know what I mean? We've got atheists. We've got people who are, they disagree with everything we believe, but they don't disagree with this.
You can't, yeah.
We should be able to build community around this. And community is common unity. That's it. Look, it's about people saying, we agree, slavery's bad. Great. Let's get them out. Let's get them out. I don't care what you believe.
100%. And I run, like, my page doesn't have any involvement with Christianity, religion, or anything like that. What would you say to people that, like, they're like, oh, I don't want to support this because you're a Christian based organization? No,
that's great. Great question. I would say, look in the mirror. If that's really your heart, then you don't personally care about this, or you're not called to it, and that's fine. We're doing this because we're Christians, first and foremost. Without Jesus, there's no way we would do this, right? I have been all over that nation. I have not met a secular humanist. I have not met a college professor who virtue signals. I haven't met anyone from that camp that's out there freeing slaves, right? Anyone that frees slaves is a friend of mine. That's how I look at it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you my worldview. This is where we stand. This is why I'm doing it. Jesus saved my life. He saved my life. I spent 24 years living recklessly. I grew up in an incredibly challenging environment. My mom died when I was 2 from drugs, from alcohol, from drinking and driving, right? I'm around addiction and all this stuff my whole life. I'm living in it as an adult. It leads me to being completely depressed, hopeless to live, right? All of this. I remember the name of Jesus. I say his name. Are you real? He said, and I said, if you're real, show me. I'll serve you the rest of my life, because I didn't have a life to live. And he showed me he was real. He literally, in the moment, filled me with the Holy Spirit. I'll never forget it. I'm not ashamed of it at all.
I can tell.
I'm not ashamed of it at all. And he rescued my life. That was 24. That was 12 years ago, right? Haven't had a sip of alcohol. Haven't had it. He's saved my life, guys. And now he's opened the door for us to do some work that really matters, like be a part of something that's way bigger than myself. I can't tell you, I live every day of my life with peace. Here's the thing. He promised peace. You can't buy it. Billionaires can't buy it. They can't afford it. You can't buy peace. Only God can give it to you. Only God can give it to you. So I'm very confident in my worldview. I'm very privileged to serve Jesus. Like, I'm not ashamed of it at all. But that's the whole abolition movement. Let's not get it twisted. And I want to say this publicly. Let's not get it twisted. The entire abolition movement is founded on Christianity. The greatest force for good in the entire free world is Christianity. You can say whatever you want from the West about the church and about the hypocrisy, and I agree with you. But when you go out into the places where people are suffering, where they're starving to death, where they're slaves, where they're being trafficked, you're going to find Christians fighting those problems. That's who's going to be there. Everywhere I've been all over the world. I just got back off the road from 30 out of 40 days traveling, right? All over the world. Everywhere I go where there's suffering, there's Christians there fighting it. The church is the greatest force for good in the world. That's just the truth, right? If you don't have that worldview, I don't care. We have people who don't have that worldview and they're supporting our work. You know why? Because our job is not to convert people. That's not what we're there to do. We're not doing that. That's not the point. Our job is to show them the love of Jesus Christ by rescuing them from slavery. Rescuing them from slavery. That's what it's about. That's what I would say to those people. I go, listen, you don't have to agree with me, but can we come to terms? Can we unite around the fact that these 4 million people, because I'll tell you this, we're not just rescuing Christians, Zach. We're not just rescuing Christians. We're rescuing Muslims. We're rescuing Hindus. The love of Christ is for everyone. We're just an example of it, right? So we're pulling them out. We don't care who it is, frankly.
I feel like there's a big difference between the church and Jesus. A lot of people, there's like a lot of religious trauma that people talk about. It's like, oh, my pastor said this or did this or this happened to me. That's not who Jesus is. That's not who the Bible says he is. And people get it misconstrued. One question I wanted to ask is like, I struggle with this. I think about pedophiles. I think about human trafficking. I think about the porn industry, all this horrible stuff all day. I kind of struggle with it sometimes. How do you manage it? You've obviously seen a lot worse and like a lot of more real stuff. What goes through your mind? Like, yes, you said Jesus, and I know you can't reiterate that enough, which I think is great, but like, are there any valid steps that people could take that they're in this environment and they're feeling this darkness and this negativity? What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, so I think that's a fair question. For me, I know what produces life and what produces death. If something produces death and it's just like I'm just gaining knowledge on that or the depths of that thing and it's just producing this darkness in me, I know it's not what God wants me to focus on. There's a scripture that talks about whatever's good, whatever's praiseworthy, right? Whatever's honorable. Focus on those things. So for me, I'm a solution-focused person, not a problem-focused person.
Yeah.
I know the problem's there. Let's talk about the solution. I want to be a part of the solution. I want to be a part of whoever's fighting this thing. I want to be a part of that, right? Sure, we see some dark things while we're on the way, but like we're focused on solving the problem, not on the problem itself. We get the atrocity of it. I get how much darkness is in this world. Jesus said that it's going to be this way. It is what it is, right? Sin has consequences. People living however they want has consequences. It does, right? And so for me, I just like to focus on what we can do about it. And when you focus on what can be done about it, like if we center around the solution here, then we're constantly celebrating. Hey, I know this problem's here, but this family just got out. That's one less family. That's freaking awesome, man. That feels great. And so, you know, when you talk about people, and I want to go back to what you said about the church, right? The church is Jesus's idea. Just because there's a bad actor in it doesn't change his idea, right? We've all been hurt by pastors and people in authority because they're people. We've all hurt people, FYI. Look in the mirror, right?
Yep.
This is what he said. You look at the splinter in your brother's eye, but you don't take the plank out of your own. I've hurt people in an authority position because I wasn't Christ-like, right? I wasn't there yet. Like he's still working on me now. He's still creating a humility in me through breaking me. He's still helping me see the things that he sees in people, right? And so I think we have a culture that's just so, my real takeaway, you want it?
Of course, I'm ready.
Jesus said, if you put your hand to the plow and look back, you're not fit for the kingdom of God. That's what he said, right? Which means, and the plow is symbolism of work. It's like, do the work. Do the work. I think so many people in the West are not doing the work that they've pulled their hands up off the plow, they've crossed their arms, and they started looking at the guys doing the work. And they start criticizing the guys doing the work. I bet you Like people have said about me, oh, I bet he's involved in trafficking. I bet he's, a part of the problem or whatever. And I'm like, I could care less what you think.
Dude, I get the same. You're a pedophile. Shut up.
I could care less what you
I'm
think.
Just like, get away.
Every single word that's said on this podcast, every single word I say in my life, every single word I write, every single word you write, every single word you say, the Bible says you're going to have to give an answer for to Jesus himself. So, I fear God, man. I'm not going to, we're solving these problems for real. I really don't care what people from the outside think because my hand's on the plow. And I think if people would just go, hey, I'm in, we're going to solve this problem. But we've got video, we've got evidence. I could prove in the court of law, every single family we freed is still free. I can prove it to you in the court of law. I have all of the receipts, real receipts. I have updates from them in their new home. I have everything you can imagine. We have all of it stored securely. It can never be taken, right? Like, I can prove it to you. So why would I care when people come from the outside and say these things? I don't. And there's a lot of people that are church hurt, right? And so they just throw away the church. Oh, this guy's involved in the church. I was church hurt too. And when you say that, you're like, oh, I was hurt by the church. You weren't hurt by the church. Our pastor, Darren Tyler, who's here, always says this. He goes, write down the names of the people who hurt you. It's like 3 people. It's not the 2.6 billion Christians worldwide. It's 3 people. And you've thrown out the entire church because of 3 people at some small town, you know what I mean? Some small town church or whatever. So my encouragement to those people is, don't make Jesus that guy who hurt you. Don't make the church that guy who hurt you, because they're totally different things, even if he was a bad representative. In some ways, we're all bad representatives, right?
Yeah. Every Christian is a hypocrite in some way,
Every person is. Yeah. Every person is a hypocrite.
Every person, for sure.
But we're so afraid to just be humble and be honest and vulnerable and say, like, this is really, this is really the way it is. This is really the way where I come from. This is really who I am. And even Christians now are so ashamed to tell people they're Christians. Like, I'm not. My God set slaves free. I'm not ashamed at all. We're working all over the world, and we're building schools and clinics and wells, and we're giving it to the church. We're giving it back to the people. We don't control it. There's no weird dynamics. It's just like we're investing in these places because we're all one family. No one else is doing that in the world, just the church.
Yeah. One more question. Hypothetically, I'm broke. I have no money to give to the Conduit Mission. What should I do?
Yeah, I love that. What you can do is you can go so here's what I always say. This is my acronym, and we're working on like software solutions for this to actually build an abolition army. Here's my belief for Gen Z. We have a young adult movement here, right, at this church. It's called The Circle, and we planted it about almost 2 years ago. And the goal was we need to create a place where real discipleship can happen, because we've got such a discipleship crisis in the church. So few people are willing to do what it takes to actually put their arm around a young person and teach and practically teach them how to walk this out, right? It's kind of like, oh, go read your Bible and pray. And it's like, okay, but how do I make a living? You're like this question you're asking me right now, tangibly, practically, how do I do this? So that our last trip, they raised $35,000. They don't have money. They have the same issue as you. This group of young adults raised $35,000.
That's crazy.
They're raising money now for when we go back. They've already raised thousands of dollars now for the next trip. They raised thousands of dollars before that to rescue girls out of trafficking, right? So it's possible. Number one, know that. You got to stop thinking about what you have in your hand. There's this picture in Mark chapter 6 where Jesus goes across, he takes the disciples across the Sea of Galilee, and this crowd forms, and the disciples were tired. And it's the feeding of, go read Mark 6, you're going to get the picture, but the feeding of 5,000 people. They had 5 loaves and 2 fish. The disciples at the end of the day told Jesus, hey, we need to send them out to the city so they can buy food. They looked at what they had. He said, how much you feed them? How much food do you have? They look at they're like, we have 5 loaves and 2 fish. There's 5,000 men here. There's at least 20,000 people, by the way, when you add in women and children. So they're looking at the 5 loaves and 2 fish. That's what most people do. That's the question you just asked me. Not that you're not having faith, right? I'm just saying that's the question. What do you do when you only have 5 loaves and 2 fish? You can either trust in your own ability or you can trust in his. You can trust it. And Jesus says, set them up for dinner. Go put them in rows. And Jesus starts breaking and everyone gets fed and they have 12 baskets left over, right? The picture, the truth from that is you have more ability than you think. And so these young adults, they went out and they talked to their families. They became the storytellers. They became the voice for the voiceless. They became the ones who are teaching their parents who had money, who had the ability to make a difference, teaching those people what they were raising money for. So you could go launch a Give, Send, Go or whatever and raise this money. And like I said, we're working on a back end for this, but it's going to take some time and some money. To create an abolition army, my vision is to have a decentralized movement that's filled with people that are just representing this to their family and friends. You can adopt a family, but here's my acronym. You can give whatever you can give, okay? 100% of that's going to go to free a family. You can adopt a family, and that's the model we use for the Circle here in Franklin. And if you adopt a family, you just say, hey, it's going to cost, I'm going to raise $2,000 to get a family free, right? The number we've been using is $2,225. So you just say, I'm going to go to my family and friends. I'm going to raise this money. I'm going to advocate. I'm going to go to local businesses. I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm going to raise 10 families, whatever God puts on your heart. But we've had people go out and actually raise the money, and it's been very successful, right? And they didn't put their own money in. They just went out and raised it. And then the other thing you can do if you're a believer is pray. Prayer is the most powerful thing we can do. There's nothing like it. So you can give, you can adopt, you can pray. You can stand in the gap for slavery.
Wow, that's incredible. This has just been such an honor, like meeting up with you and just like dissecting this whole organization, because it's actually crazy. It doesn't make any sense that this still exists. And so I just see like the solutions that you're aiming towards, and I think is absolutely incredible. And like I hear the passion in your voice. I think it's so amazing. You see it and you've been on the front lines. You know exactly what's happening. And so I can't wait to hear what happens with this. And the more you're doing, like the future just seems, it's like this is what we got to do. The problem is the money, like we just need more money, truly.
Yeah, and we need more. We need more money, of course, no problem. But we need more yeses.
Yeah, absolutely. So
thanks, Zach.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you so much, dude.
Let's go finish it.
Yeah, 100%.